Communism. It has led to destruction, pain, and suffering. It has been around since the mid-1800s when Karl Marx, the father of communism, and his fellow philosopher Friedrich Engels, who being forced into family business started his interest in socialism. And this started their philosophical theory called Marxism, which was given to the public as a communist manifesto which eventually escalated into communism. Now, Marx had consistently wondered if there was a better way than capitalism. He had a fear that capitalism would eventually destroy itself, and over time, he began the ideals of Marxism. I am Karl Marx, and have seen the hardships of the labor that you have been put through, which is when I began with my theory of Marxism. I believe there's only one way to reach Marxism, which is to get rid of the working class. There are too many contradictions between human nature and the capitalist system.
And I am Friedrich Engels. I would like to become your associate, please.
Qualifications?
I have none, but a longing to change our government.
Okay, sounds good.
Now, Friedrich Engels became Marx's associate and stayed with him during the early stages of communism or Marxism.
The Marxism theory eventually did start. The theory is a social, political, and economic theory that states basically, here are real poor people. Anyways, eventually, Communist Manifesto was established in 1848. It was the base of this entire movement. It called to workers to revolt against the labor and capitalism they faced.
Now, I know I have spoken to you before, but you can revolt from this. The Communist Manifesto has been created. You can revolt. You can be freed from these hardships that you face. Now rise up against these people.
We have created these people's perfect things. We have seen your labors and your struggles when you want to help. This genius here created Marxism, the perfect deal. Believe in Marxism and you will be saved.
Vladimir Lenin was a Russian revolutionary politician and political theorist. He was born on April 22, 1870. This man created something known as the All-Russian Communist Party. He took advantage of the October Revolution and people's need for change and created the first communist state.
I am a Marxist, and I will create something known as Leninism. I will make Russia and all the world under a communist government. I will do it.
This is the same idea as Marxism, except following more of a socialism aspect.
No, it's strictly communism. I agree with Marx in a way, but it needs to be a different strategy. It's a way of thinking about the Communist Party should be organized. It says that it should be a dictatorship which emphasizes the transition from capitalism to socialism.
Lenin talked his idea into some other people and eventually did what he set out for. Russia and later the Soviet Union were under communist control. It was under a party called the All-Russian Communist Party. Lenin talked to the right people because the Bolshevik wing of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party helped him seize control of Russia. But he actually tried to replace the communism in Europe with socialism.
I say to my fellow Europeans that all of the strife of World War I comes from the fault of capitalism. I will follow my beliefs through and through at all costs until I see the government change.
He stayed true to this all too well. He ended up getting exiled from Europe and called back to Russia.
I believe the world should be pure communist. The world will be a stateless, classless, egalitarian society of people that are free of exploitation and alienation. Oh, they also get to control your destiny, and all you have to do is abide by one simple rule: from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs.
After this day, Lenin also believed that the way to get communism in every country was to accomplish socialism first. His ultimate plan was to get Russia into socialist society. Lenin sincerely believed in his heart that what he was doing for Russia would bring communists into the world.
How do I turn Russia into a socialist society? In order to suppress the bourgeoisie and turn Russia into a socialist economy, I need a dictatorship of the proletariat.
The proletariat were the working class, and they were forced to accept meager wages under the bourgeoisie and felt exploited. The working class ruled everything, and used this to break down capitalism to establish communism and the dictatorship that Vladimir wanted.
I'm starving, I'm angry, and I'm working overtime for a country that is unable to provide for all our needs. With the October Revolution, I am unable to provide for my own family. We all need a new plan of government.
By fall of 1917, he seized control of many of the lower working class, such as factory workers, peasants, soldiers, and sailors, into the Red Guard. The Bolsheviks seized power of the government and proclaimed Soviet rule, making Lenin leader of the world's first communist state. The new Soviet government ended Russia's involvement in World War I with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and ended the Russian Revolution.
I have died, and I am content with the dent that I have made on the world. I died of a stroke in January of 1924, and I was 54 years of age. I have just hoped that my legacy lives on.
In 1921, the Communist Party in China was formed, taking inspiration from Russia's revolution. After Lenin died, Joseph Stalin took over. He tried to control the country by letting his state control it, but it didn't end well. It led to famine. The country's state went downhill. It started imprisoning and deporting detractors to camps in which they would do very hard labor.
I am Joseph Stalin, and I believe that letting the state take control is the best way to run a country.
I'm starving and unable to provide for my family. Can you do anything else?
No! You are ungrateful and not taking into consideration how this government is run. This life is perfect for everyone in it. You will be taken to prison. You understand? But no! Take her away. What? Ungrateful people.
Stalin had no idea what this would lead to. He ended up murdering over 1 million people and was known as the Great Purge.
World War II had just ended in 1945 when Japan had been defeated and Korea split in two. The north part of Korea was Soviet territory and the south was United States territory. In 1947, the President of the United States, President Harry S. Truman, said that we should contain communism as much as possible. This ended up leading to send troops into Vietnam to help them overcome North Korean communist attackers.
But in 1950, the first U.S. troops engaged in the Korean War. To try to get North Korea as a communist community, it invaded with the intent of creating a unified communist state. The war would last until July 27, 1953, with North Korea, China, and the United Nations signing an armistice agreement.
The Berlin Wall stood between East Berlin, which is strictly communist, and West Berlin, which was protected by the U.S. The Berlin Wall stood for almost 30 years.
The day the Berlin Wall fell was a day of mighty celebration. The Berlin Wall stood for control of the Soviet Union and was their pride. So when it fell, so did the Soviet Union. Within 1989 and 1990, the rest of the Soviet Union fell apart.
Although there are a lot of countries that aren't communist today, there are 5. There is Laos, North Korea, China, Cuba, and Vietnam.
Laos's president is Thongloun Sisoulith, or if you meet him in real life, His Excellency. His job is to oversee the work being done and to make sure the government is stable.
North Korea chooses to claim they are not communist. Instead, they decided to call themselves a Democratic People's Republic, which continues to be a Jewish socialist state under the rule of the Workers' Party of Korea, which is communist.
China gained its Communist Party in 1921 under the rule of Mao Zedong. The Communist Party started to gain control in 1947 because of him and started a revolution. Later, they chose to allow free speech, worship, press, and other things. Not all the country follows these things.
Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin would have delighted in knowing about Cuba. For their Communist Party, they used the Marxism-Leninism model. The Communist Party is the main role in society.
Vietnam became a communist country in 1975, and that started a war that is still going on today. The U.S. fought in this war in the 20th century. Vietnam is still fighting non-communist countries.